Hey guys, welcome back here to Intuitive Angling, and much appreciated you guys checking the episode out and spending some time with me. We're going to be talking about what to do when the bass stop biting. You know, say for example, you're out on the lake and you're catching a few fish, or you get on a spot that you're catching them and they just stop biting. What can you do to get those fish biting again, or to figure out what happened there? Because this is a pretty complex equation, because there's a lot of different variables and factors to consider. I've learned the hard way by making a lot of mistakes over the years, but I want to pass along some things that work for me, some ways that I figured out how to get those fish started up again and keep catching fish after they stop biting. So we're going to dig into that in the episode today. Also guys, a couple quick things to remind you before we get started. I want you guys to just invite everybody, guys, if you love beef jerky or summer sausage or pepperoni, guys, check out the Bridgeford beef jerky, man. You can get this at the checkout aisle at any Walmart across the country, a lot of grocery stores. This is the best jerky you will ever taste in your life. You can't put it down. I've been to the plant. I see the quality meat that they use, the cuts of meat they use to make it. You could use the meat they make in this jerky for your Sunday dinner. It's unbelievable quality, but you can get that at any Walmart across the country. Sorry about my dog barking on the porch out there. She's wanting to get back in the house here. But check that out. And also guys, real quick reminder, if you guys are looking for an awesome freaking bait cast reel, guys, check out this new Cast King ALTI Elite bait caster. This is the only bait cast reel I've ever used. It's pretty much backlash free because of this Halo Vortex braking system. You can literally cast it without even thumbing it. 11 ball bearings, all titanium spool, built for stout. I'll have the Cast King link in the description of this video, along with my promo code Randy10. You can get an additional discount to use that. Thank you very much for enduring all the plugs there. Really appreciate that. Okay guys, what to do when those bass stop biting. And if I start sweating, guys, it's 10:30 at night here in the tackle room. It's still 92 degrees out and the humidity is about 60%. So if I look like I'm hot, that's the reason why. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about what to do, you know, if those fish stop biting. Okay, this is going to happen to everybody. There's not a single angler out there that's not going to experience this at some point. So you sort of have to know, you know, how to make adjustments with that. Try to get here where the light's not too bright on everybody. But you have to know what type of adjustments to make when this happens. So first of all, before you decide to leave an area, or if the fish stop biting, then you got to figure out what you need to do. You have to first assess the potential that area has in order to hold a group of fish. Some areas, you may just have caught all the fish there. You may have maxed it out, and it doesn't matter what you do. If they stop biting, there's just not any more fish there to get caught. So before you make this determination on whether you should even stay with it and try to figure out what's going on or not, you have to accurately assess the potential of that area. And the high potential areas, let's talk about the high potential areas and the low potential areas. The highest potential areas that hold groups of fish are places that have a diversity of cover and a lot of different cover and access to deep water. So let's say, for example, if you've got a big grass flat or a big lily pad field that's got some fairly close water deep next to it, or deep water close next to it, that's the area that has a tremendous amount of potential. If you're back in like a big creek arm and you've got a creek area that's got a bunch of rock transitions and a bunch of lay down trees in the water, maybe some boat docks here and there, you got a lot of different options, and you got creek channels running through that area that act as highways, a big population of fish can move in there. That's one high percentage area. On the other end of the spectrum, if you have an area that does not have much cover in it, or does not have a diversity of cover, or is not located in proximity to a creek channel or a river channel, those areas probably don't have a lot of populations of fish. And then everything else is sort of in between there. So you have to accurately assess the potential of that area before you can say to yourself, okay, these fish have stopped biting, what do I need to do? So let's assume the fact that you're in a high potential area and you think there's a lot of fish in this area, but they've just stopped biting. Here's a couple things that you can do to really get them fired up again. Number one, let me give you a real big tip that a lot of people don't know. If you're catching fish like down a bank or a row of docks or a grass bed or whatever, and all of a sudden they stop biting and you've been catching them, one of the first things that I do is I'll crank up my motor and I'll idle back and forth across the area. I get everything stirred up. I get the water stirred up. I get, if there's bait fish or crawdads under the water, they're going to get stirred up. Sometimes, depending upon, how the area is set up, I may even run through there on plane. But if I can't run through there on plane, at least I idle through there at a slow speed. A lot of times, guys, that's a little trick you don't hear much about. A lot of times that will get those fish fired up. They get stirred up a little bit, everything gets stirred up on the bottom, and they get active for a little bit. Another thing that you can do is basically come back a little bit later. Sometimes it's a timing deal. If you've been catching some fish and all of a sudden they turn off, sometimes they feed at different windows throughout the course of the day. So if your area has a lot of potential, don't give up on it. Let it rest for a couple hours and then come back into that area a couple hours later and try it. Those are two approaches. Some other things that work are the obvious things like a bait change. When you're talking about bait change, you're talking about your lure category, your lure profile, and your lure color. Those three things are the things you have to change. What I usually do is I change like my lure color. Let's say, for example, I'm catching them on a black and blue jig, I might try a brown and orange. If I'm catching them on a blackback chartreuse side crankbait, I may go to a perch pattern or shad pattern. That's usually the first thing I do to try to get those fish to bite again. And a lot of times that's all it takes, especially if you have a change in your light intensity. So let's say, for example, you caught them on a blackback chartreuse crankbait the first 3 or 4 hours of the day. Then the sun starts getting up a little bit. You got more light penetration in the water. Sometimes a simple color change can make it. Other times a lure profile or a category can change, because let's say, for example, you're catching them on reaction baits like a chatterbait or a spinnerbait. Something may happen. Maybe the wind picked up or the wind died off a little bit, and then the mood and the personality of the bass changed, and you have to go to a slow bait like a jig or a worm or a tube or something like that. So your lure category has a lot to do with it, and then the lure profile has a lot to do with it. I've seen this one really evident. I can't tell you how many times where I've been working down a stretch of bank and I'm catching them on a full-size jig, and then they sort of slow down, they get off of it, and I can go right back through that same area with like a little 4-inch worm or a little ringworm or a little small downsized creature bait and keep catching fish by changing your lure profile. It's usually one of those three, or sometimes it's a combination of all of them. The color, the profile, and the category. So you have to mix that in there. Another thing that you can do with it is change your angle of approach. I've seen this evident a lot. Instead of like going down a bank at a certain angle, try approaching that bank at a different angle. Come back through to the completely different angle. A lot of times what happens is, let's say, for example, if you're working down a row of trees or something like that, and you're working down from left to right, sometimes you can just reverse the boat and come back, right to left, and your bait has a completely different angle. Sometimes that'll trigger a strike with it. So those are some things you can do, guys. If your bass quit biting, there's a lot of decisions you have to make, and I'd laid them out what it is right there. And usually it's a combination of a couple of different things. It works more than it doesn't, but sometimes it's just fishing. Sometimes everything that I talked about there, sometimes it may not work at all. That's the wonderment and mystery of fishing, is that bass don't read books, bass don't watch videos, bass don't listen to the advice of YouTubers. They have their own mind. So sometimes, things are going to work and sometimes they're not. And that's, again, why bass fishing is it's not only the toughest sport in the world, it's the best sport in the world, because of all those things together. So anyway, I hope it helps out, guys. We'll talk later.